If you're stepping into the world of projects and are wondering, what is it that I need to know? Well, you have come to the right place, because in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the project basics that are going to help you to avoid any pitfalls. What are project management fundamentals? These are the fundamentals that are critical to your overall project being successful. It's the principles, it's the process, it's the people. And it's really important that if you understand these fundamentals, it's going to carry you throughout the stages of your project. And by having really good structure to your project and understanding these project management principles or fundamentals, it's really going to help. So in this video, we're going to focus on the 3 P's of project fundamentals. People. This is the first P. And when I talk about people, I'm really talking about your direct team who's supporting you as the project manager in creating and doing your deliverable, like getting it to fruition as per your project scope statement. So people is so important to your project. It's all about team dynamics, because without the people, you won't be able to execute the work. Truly, you won't be able to execute the work. So the first project fundamental is all about people. Now, what do we do when it comes to our teams, and how do we ensure strong fundamental principles? And that's understanding team dynamics. Your teams go through definite stages. And I talk about this in my Slave Project Management course about the different stages of team development and team dynamics. And it's important that you understand that, like forming, storming, norming, performing. That's all critical in order to help your people. Now, what you want to do though, to help with those team dynamics and bring people throughout the stages that they need to do, is you want to get connected with them. Now, one of the things I don't want you to think is that connection is solely through activities like introduction games or workshop games, and that's going to get us to be connected with each other. That's actually not the case. I find sometimes in projects, because you're so busy executing on the work and time is really tight, sometimes people in your teams like, why are we doing this team building activity? Sometimes I get that, and they're valid in that question when they're so busy trying to get things done. So you have to think a little bit differently. When you're thinking about your people, you need to have an understanding of the dynamics and be very much aware if you're in a certain stage and how to get people out of that. Number 2, it's not to say you can't do those introduction activities, but you don't want it wasting up tons of time. Maybe if you just do something short and sweet in the beginning when people are first kind of forming in their introduction to everybody, then that, can be really it can be a great way to kind of break the ice, but you don't want to be doing it all the time. But understanding team dynamics and helping your team get through it, and even more importantly, support your team, remove the roadblocks. If your people in your team feel supported and they have the ability to do the work that they need to do, that is a huge role and activity and a fundamental as a project manager. You are the roadblock removal. You are there to protect your team, to give them the time and space they need to get their work done, so that, and ultimately, everyone's work together is going to give the deliverable that your project is doing. So people, it's really about your team, and support them in whatever they need to ensure really good team dynamics. Because the last point I'm going to make is, if you have really good solid team dynamics, you as a team are going to move mountains. I've seen this, and it's really cool when you have a team that just comes together and they are in that performing mode and they want to help each other out because they're all about the end result deliverable. Why? Because everyone's connected. It is an amazing experience to be in. But if you're constantly in a storming mode, it's a lot more difficult. That's why this is the first project management fundamental. It's all about people, and get really good at that. Process. Process is the second P. Now, I want to be very clear. Process is not documentation. Process is flow. It's how you execute your project in the flow, the sequencing of events. Now, what's really nice about the fundamentals of project management, the second P, is it doesn't really matter the methodology that you use, whether it's an agile, waterfall, hybrid. It's all about the flow. You just have to have some structure around the flow that you're going to be executing your project on. Because why? Everything has a start, a middle, and an end. And if you just jump into the middle activities, you're missing out on a lot of very important stuff in the beginning, and vice versa. Let's say you just do the beginning and the middle, but you don't do a really good closeout. Again, that's a big pitfall for projects, of really not ensuring that they meet everything that they need to meet from a deliverable standpoint from a project. So what are some things from a flow perspective? Here's a really good example. I see a lot of times in projects, they get their marching order and they right away do a kickoff. And that kickoff, they bring people in, and then all of a sudden it goes flat because there's a lot of work that they have to do. But if you want to think about process and the flow that I'm talking about, there's a very distinguished flow that you should go through. And what I base Slay Project Management, my online course, is on the 5 stages: initiation, planning, execution, monitor, control, and closing, with tons of iterations when it comes into execution. So, but the flow is, which is really critical for success, so I can be very successful with my iterations, is in that beginning stage, I have to create my scope statement. I need to get approval from the sponsors. I need to make sure that that approval is done not just from the sponsor, but a steering committee. I'm gonna have to get people approved for the project. This is all the work that I'm doing prior to even having a kickoff. So when I finally do have my kickoff with my project team, I've gotten approval, all the management knows about it, we're all on the same page, I have drafts of stuff, so much so that I have a package that I give to my team. So at the end of our kickoff, they can actually start working on the project. And now everyone's really excited. That makes a huge difference. That's process. That's the flow of the project. And what's really cool for you, since I'm talking about the beginning stages, I have a free webinar that you can check out. The link is underneath this video. You can go right now if you want and check that out, which is on the 5 key fundamentals you need to know about starting off your project. So it's really critical process that you understand the flow of your project, and you just can't be jumping around everywhere. You have to have some sort of framework. Okay, now the 3rd P, project documentation. Yes, I know documentation doesn't start with a P. That's why I put project in front of it. But let's be honest, it is fundamental to our project's success. Now the issue, and the reason why I put it 3rd, is because people and process is critical, but you also need your documentation, your project documentation. But what I see a lot of times is people spend too much time on this. They're putting all of their effort and energy into project documentation, and they're not focusing on the people or the process. So if you're going to put this in priority sequence, it's people first, it's process second, and then obviously project documentation 3rd. Why? Because your documentation clarifies things, it puts people on the right track, it is your go-to when things need to be validated or course corrected. It's your single place, or it's the documentation you need to guide people so that they can start working on their own. Okay? Now, too many times I see too much documentation, too much being created, and there's a fine line. Like, that's why I focus on the practicality of project management. There's so much out there when it comes to projects and documentation. And if you're doing a real major mega global project, you probably need a lot of the documentation that us as project managers would use in those type of projects. But for majority of business projects, I would say there's probably a good 20 to 30% of information that you really need, that again, I put in my Slay Project Management online course to really just focus on the efficiency of it and the practicality. Because you don't want to be over documenting, it's too much work for you, and as well it's a little bit overwhelming for those on your project team. Again, remember, it's about people and process, and you don't want to overwhelm it with documentation. You want to have the right amount. And so really streamlining it, having the few pieces that you go to, using it as a baseline, combining some of that information so that really people know where to go, that it's going to have everything at their fingertips so they can be successful and going, okay, what is it we're supposed to do? Ah, here's a chart, or here's all the information. Oh, what are my tasks? Oh, they're in the WBS action plan. Oh, and there's a whole bunch of other information in this particular document as well, just to keep everybody on track. It is critical if you want to avoid the pitfalls. You do need the documentation, but just with a little caution and warning, don't overdo it. You want to have the right amount from a practicality standpoint. Don't forget to save your seat on my free project management webinar training, which is going to teach you the fundamentals on starting off your project correctly. Again, we want to avoid these pitfalls. If you have some more questions about project fundamentals, you know what? Check out this next video. There's some additional information that you can check out. On that note, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this amazing community. If you have a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Until then, I will see you at our next video. See ya.